Remember a year ago, we were hearing about some kind of biology laboratories in Ukraine? What exactly were they there for? What did the Russians think they were there for? And how does it involve the Bidens today? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is another Declaration of Truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. Late on the night of February 1st, user Kanekoa the Great, who revealed the Google leaks, by the way, revealed something else. Shortly after Russia began its special military operation in Ukraine, I heard rumors from a source whom I may not name that the real object of that operation were certain laboratories in Ukraine having American funding and under American direction. Apparently, the Russians thought these were biological weapons development facilities, and my source assured me that that's what they were. They don't exist anymore, whatever they were. Now, as a user calling himself Kanekoa the Great dropped a thread strongly suggesting that those facilities were for weapons development. Moreover, he linked to another thread that appeared 2 days before, offering further evidence. That evidence came from a user who won reinstatement at Elon's grand mass liberation of Twitter. The two threads suggest that the frantic support of Ukraine is a vain attempt to hide the establishment and the mission of those laboratories. The American embassy in Ukraine assured everybody last year that these are threat reduction facilities. I have a link in the description to their statement on the matter. So as you see, I'm not going to make you dig through a lot of other links. Now, is that it? Is the embassy making a distinction without a difference? You decide. This will take some time to get into. Before I begin, I do want to shout out to the prime sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views. Link in the description. Be sure to check out the awesome CNAV Store. Scroll down near the bottom for that link. Lots of great merchandise there, especially this t-shirt that I have chosen for today, which reads, "I need new conspiracies as all the old ones came true." Very apropos, as you will soon see. One more thing. If you like what you're about to hear, you can like this video. You can also click the bell icon to get a notice every time I come out with a new one. In fact, do you see the new icon, the heart shape with the US dollar sign in it? That's the super thanks icon. If you really want to keep these videos coming, click that and leave me a tip. Any currency will do, so long as it's legal tender. Now, let's begin with an article that appeared in CNAV almost 11 months ago. On the very day the Russian army first moved into Ukraine, the rumors started flying. My own anonymous source had me on the lookout. Sure enough, Veterans Today and a site calling himself Rue Preparing, Rue for Russia, I guess, carried the rumors. And then came the first thread by a user calling himself WarClandestine. I have links in the description to his thread, which I did not have before, for reasons that will become clear. Here is how his thread went. He began with a mildly obscene expression of surprise that I will not categorize further. Then he gets to the meat. Quote, "Zelensky said the Russians are firing at military installations." How broad is that term? I am seeing speculation that could include U.S.-installed biolabs. At first I was like, no way! Then I started digging. First I checked if the U.S. even have biolabs in Ukraine. Turns out, we do. And in classic U.S. fashion, it's marketed as defense. Biological Threat Reduction Program in Ukraine. Studying the most dangerous viruses in the world, not viruses only, by the way, at Russia's border. Okay, so we are studying the world's most deadly pathogens at Russia's border. It's just for defense. Not that big of a deal, right? Wrong! I didn't know this until today, but Russia has been accusing the U.S. of creating bioweapons at their border. What? And they have good reason to believe that, as the U.S. NIH-funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan, then the virus that shall remain nameless got out and it ruined the world. Russia and China asked the UN for the U.S. and its allies to be checked and limited in biocapabilities 4 months ago. What? Do you all know what this means? China and Russia indirectly and correctly blame the U.S. for the outbreak of the virus that shall remain nameless, and are fearful that the U.S. and its allies have more viruses, bioweapons, to let out. This is massive. Yet I'm disturbed that I hadn't even known about this 4 months ago. So how does that pertain to Ukraine? Well, where in Ukraine are the explosions taking place? Here's a reported explosion in Lutsk. This is 75 miles inland in far western Ukraine, the opposite border of Russia. What does this have to do with Crimea and Donetsk in the east? Reportedly, Kiev has seen missile strikes as well at their airports and military installations. Kiev is also on the western side of Ukraine, also a city the United States government has confirmed the U.S. have built biolabs in. Putin also continues to call it a special military operation. Says he wants to demilitarize and denazify the country, but not occupy it. What does he mean by that? What is he really targeting? Yes, I know he targeted airports and military capabilities, but if Putin really believes, as his administration has stated publicly multiple times, that the U.S. are creating bioweapons at Russia's borders, then this entire situation could be way bigger. I'm not sure what is going on, but in the past 4 months, Russia and China accused the U.S. of creating bioweapons at their borders, and none of us heard about it, and our media wrote it off as disinformation and largely didn't report on it other than to call it a conspiracy theory. For all of this to make sense, you must be privy to the reality that the U.S. NIH did indeed create the virus that shall remain nameless in Wuhan, which has been largely accepted as the reality and confirmed in the emails between Robert Collins and Anthony Fauci. I broke down their official NIH emails released by Congress. Now here he quote tweets an earlier thread of his that he made more than a month before. If you respond or quote tweet me, get the hashtag going and see if we can trend it. We need a reporter to ask the Biden administration or international reporters to ask their administrations what they know about the U.S. biolabs in Ukraine. Here's an overlap of reported missile strike locations and the biolab locations. Since the top map was made, more missiles hit Lviv as well. It certainly appears Putin is targeting the cities and locations with U.S. biolabs present. He is 100% going after the alleged bioweapons. Unquote, WarClandestine. Now, about those two maps, they overlap exactly. The first targets of Russian artillery, missile, and or aerial bombardment were the very labs the U.S. Embassy admitted to funding and directing. Twitter's Trust and Safety team suspended WarClandestine's account on the strength of that thread, but not before some tweets came in by way of reaction. And I have links in the description to 8 tweets altogether in that category. Many expressed skepticism of his account, but the skepticism amounted to parsing of definitions. For example, a user called rbizzle7 asked WarClandestine straight out whether he defined gain-of-function research as biological weaponization. So make of that what you will. And someone else accused WarClandestine of making it up to support Russian military action, which this user regarded as illegitimate. Now, this other user replied immediately to the first tweet in the thread. Then we have an 11-month hiatus between that tweet and WarClandestine's reply, saying, "You were saying." Clearly, Twitter suspended WarClandestine almost at once, and then, when he got his account back, he started the argument all over again. The next 4 tweets, to which I have links in the description, are other confirmations I found nearly a year ago. I also have a link, as I told you, to the United States Embassy statement. Probably the same one that WarClandestine saw. Now, beginning on March 3rd, 2022, confirmations began to roll in. I have links in the description to 6 tweets and 2 videos, one on YouTube, the other on Rumble. Now, one commentator did say he found no clear or convincing evidence that those laboratories were developing bioweapons. It's just that the State Department described them as doing the same thing in Ukraine as they did in Wuhan. Again, you decide. But hang on, gets better later on. One other user, Diana Gailanziera, said that the embassy had deleted all documents relating to these laboratories, but not, she said before, she found them. She stored them on her own repository and shared them on tweets on her account. Her account is still active. You can see them there. And I mentioned those 2 videos. One is by Dr. Stephen Turley, containing Senate testimony by one Victoria Newland, confirming that some labs doing some work were in Ukraine. And the Rumble video features the spokeswoman from the Russian Foreign Ministry spelling out Russia's accusation against the United States. So much for the activity of February and March of 2022. I am now going to fast forward to January 29th of this year. But before I do, I want to shout out to a sponsor who can really help you through the economic storms to come. That sponsor is OurSilverLines.com. Do you feel like you're working harder for your money just to get by? You are not alone. The fluctuating economy, employment issues, and unexpected changes in life have left many families struggling over the past few years. Collecting gold and silver can help shield you against many of these challenges. But if you're like me many years ago, you don't know where or how to start. Our Silver Lines helps by connecting you with thousands of members who are learning the secrets to creating and protecting true wealth by collecting precious metals. Now, whether you just want to collect rare and unique coins or take advantage of the business opportunities this company provides, either way, they can help you learn to live an exceptional life. Visit OurSilverLines.com to learn how you can build a legacy for your future. And now, we come from past to present. On January 29th, WarClandestine left another thread. I have links in the description to every other tweet in that thread, as I usually do. Quote, "Now that I have everyone's attention, allow me to address why U.S. establishment politicians are sending tanks, jets, weapons, equipment, and over $100 billion to Ukraine. It has nothing to do with Ukraine citizens and everything to do with deep state assets and secrets in Ukraine." Close quote. He then refers to something called the Nunn-Lugar Threat Reduction Act of 2005. Here are the principles involved. Senator Sam Nunn, Democrat from Georgia. Senator Richard Lugar, Republican from Indiana. And then Senator Barack H. Obama, Democrat from Illinois. WarClandestine shows, with abundant links to articles in the Washington Post, Reuters, and other organs, that Senators Lugar and Obama traveled to Ukraine in 2005 to take over several former Soviet laboratories and other facilities, every one of which was engaged in what they called anti-plague research. Back then, they asserted that those were bioweapons facilities. Today, of course, they sing a different tune. Now, pay attention. WarClandestine blames Obama for, as he puts it, opening the floodgates for the deep state. Obama set up these labs to run under American direction, with American oligarchs, his word, not mine, to own them and run them. That's WarClandestine's word. Then, WarClandestine says everything went sour. in the Maidan Revolution of 2014. Victoria Nuland is involved in this, and so was then sex state Clinton. They put the Zelensky regime in place, and, says WarClandestine, Zelensky is a deep state proxy. The Bidens are all over this. Joe Biden visited Ukraine no fewer than 13 times or more. We also know that he got a Ukrainian prosecutor fired when said prosecutor wouldn't leave his son Hunter alone. If only half of this is true, we might have an idea about those classified documents Biden had, huh? Think about it. Last, WarClandestine summarizes everyone's motives. All our tax monies are ending up in Ukraine because the deep state is protecting its investment in that region. The legacy media are all out pro-Ukraine because they answer to their big pharma advertisers. And I've dropped a hint of some of that recently, if you recall. The FBI and the DHS are in on this because the entire intelligence community is compromised. And the House Democratic Caucus impeached Trump over one phone call to Ukraine because Trump knew what they were about and they knew he knew. And furthermore, Zelensky destroyed many of those documents, or tried to, because he knew Vladimir Putin would be coming after them. The World Health Organization advised Ukraine to destroy every sample. Same reasoning. Liz Wheeler asked him for an interview. I have a link in the description to her tweet asking him to message her directly, and to her 45-minute podcast that she titled A Conspiracy Theory About Ukraine. I also have links to 5 tweets giving reaction to this thread. 3 of them are some back and forth, including one user who wanted to argue about conspiracy theorists. At the end of that thread, one user tweeted a side-by-side of American, or maybe British or Canadian infantrymen jumping off a beach-heading boat, the kind with the jumping-off ramp for a bow that the Navy calls LCVP on D-Day at Normandy. In contrast, we see a face-masked man hiding behind a cabinet. One user, apparently an American, wondered forthrightly whether America was aiding the wrong side. Another user expressed what looks like skepticism, but bear in mind the Ukrainian flag that he flies is part of his account name. With that as background, we now turn to Kanekoa the Great's thread. I have links to that too, and again, to every other tweet, 9 in all. In that thread, Kanekoa reiterates what WarClandestine said about the non-Lugar Threat Reduction Agreement. He lists 7 different pathogens that Ukraine allegedly had and the U.S. would assist Ukraine to upgrade security for. The virus that shall remain nameless is not one of them, but anthrax is, along with diphtheria, cholera, typhoid, and 3 others that you probably wouldn't recognize. He mentioned a company called Metabiota, which WarClandestine also mentioned, and listed Hunter Biden as an investor in it. Lots of documents and video follow about Metabiota, including a glowing PBS special on them, calling them the virus hunters. That came out in 2011. Fast forward to 2014, with a vice president at Metabiota writing a memo to Hunter Biden saying Metabiota could help Ukraine, and I quote, assert Ukraine's cultural and economic independence from Russia, close quote. Now, how did we get from disease agent security to self-determination of nations? And why did the gas company Burisma pitch a science project involving it with Metabiota? And did you know that Hunter Biden had a boss at Burisma who also was the boss of Volodymyr Zelensky before the revolution that made him president of Ukraine? Now, about Zelensky. He pretends to be a man of the people. In fact, he has investments in many offshore firms, offshore to Ukraine that is, that go back to 2012. We see that in a depository called the Pandora Papers. Link in one of the tweets. And who was that boss? His name is Ihor Kolomoisky. a very big man in Ukraine, so big that he provided security for Zelensky in his presidential campaign. Kolomoisky also funded the Azov, Aidar, and Dnipro battalions. All these units stand accused of war crimes against people in the Donbass. Then what do we see? Documents that allegedly come from Hunter Biden's laptop, mentioning some of these very war crimes. I refuse to describe them further here. Just follow the links. Finally, the Trump Justice Department in 2020 accused Kolomoisky of laundering $4 billion from a bank he owned to some properties he owns in America. So there you have it, folks. Most of the reaction to this thread is of the there you see and wow varieties. But I have links in the description to 2 tweets adding original material in the form of synoptic graphics. One of them lists biographies of 8 United States citizens, which the graphic describes as, and I quote, representatives of U.S. biotechnology corporations, institutes, and organizations interested in biological projects in Ukraine. Close quote. And now I'm going to close with my own analysis. The problem with conspiracy theories is that the intelligence take from social media looks the same whether the theory is true or false. But the problem for those who dismiss such theories as false is that too many of them have proved true. The Twitter files and other such releases have in fact proved the truth of the oldest conspiracy theory of the internet, which is that legacy media and social media moderators really do preferentially suppress content that questions leftist authority. And at the same time, these same organs accuse others of offenses varying from misprision of the news to treason. The Russian Federation has long held that Ukraine had biological weapons development facilities in it. We know from the FTX revelations that Ukraine has been a money laundry for leftist causes, including the Democratic Party. But don't forget the rhinos who have taken FTX money too. More to the point, the United States Embassy in Ukraine did avow having biological threat reduction facilities in Ukraine. When does such research go beyond threat reduction toward outright weaponization of viral or microbial life? This brings up another problem. Today, nearly all the authorities tasked with making such a distinction stand accused of nefarious behavior. So, this is what the House of Representatives needs to investigate now that a different party conference has taken it over. Let those embassy and State Department personnel make their technical distinctions while seated at a green baize table. That, even more than vax mandates, deserves investigation. Immediate investigation. Links in the description of the article to the U.S. Embassy statement on threat reduction facilities in Ukraine, to those 2 old videos I mentioned, to Liz Wheeler's more recent podcast of January 31st, to WarClandestine's first thread and the reaction to it, to the confirmation tweets I mentioned, to the second WarClandestine thread, Liz Wheeler's request for interview, and the reaction to that second thread, to a Kanekoa the Great's thread, to those 2 tweets contributing their own graphics, to my Declarations of Truth Twitter account, and to Conservative News and Views. I've also left links to the awesome CNAV Store and to oursilverlights.com, as I also mentioned. You know already about how to like a video, turn on notifications, and leave a tip. On the end screen, I'm going to leave a subscribe link to my channel and links to Dr. Steve Turley's video, to Liz Wheeler's podcast episode, and to a new playlist I am developing about all things Ukraine. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.